Richard Little is dead. The most prolific serial killer in America history has died. Los Angeles, California. The man authorities say was the most prolific serial killer in U.S. history, with nearly 60 confirmed victims, died Wednesday in California. He was 80 years old. Samuel Little, who had diabetes, heart trouble, and other maladies, died at a California hospital, according to the Department of Corrections and the Rehabilitation. He was serving a life sentence for multiple counts of murder. California Corrections Department spokesman Vicki Waters said there was no signs of foul play, and his cause of death will be determined by the coroner. A career criminal who had been in and out of jail for decades, Little denied for years that he had ever killed anyone. Then, in 2008, he opened up to a Texas Ranger, James Holland, who had been asked to question him about the killings. It turned out Little didn't even commit. During an approximate 700 hours of interviews, however, Little provided details of scores of slayings only the killer would know. A skilled artist, he even provided Holland with dozens of paintings and drawings of the victims, sometimes scribbling their names when he could remember them, as well as details such as years, locations, and how he actually committed the murders and where he dumped the bodies. By the time of his death, Little had confessed to killing 93 people between 1970 and 2005. Most of the slayings took place in southern Florida and in Southern California, but every state in between. Authorities who continue to investigate his claims said they have confirmed nearly 60 killings and have no reason to doubt the others are real. We just haven't found the bodies, the detective went on to say. They're probably out there. A lot of geography has changed over the course of all these years. The numbers dwarf those of the Green River Killer, Gary Ridgway, who confessed to 49, John Wayne Gacy, who confessed to 33, and Ted Bundy, who confessed to 36. Almost all of Little's victims were women, many of them prostitutes, drug addicts, poor people living on the edges of society. They were individuals, he said, he believed, who would leave few people looking for them and very few evidence for the police to follow. Indeed, local authorities in states across the country initially classified many of the deaths as accidents, drug overdoses, or believed that either their pimp or a John who had picked them up had beaten them. None of them had actually been connected to Little at all. Little strangled most of his victims, usually soon after meeting them, during chance encounters. He drowned one woman out of all 93 that he has confessed to. The woman he had drowned, he met at a nightclub in 1982. He was nearly 80 in failing health and served a life sentence in California prison when he began confiding in Holland in May of 2018. After years of refusing to talk to authorities about any of his crimes ever, even small petty crimes, whenever law enforcement would approach him and ask him about anything that he had ever been convicted of or may have done, he would just sit there and smile at them and refuse to say anything. But something about James Holland struck a chord with Little, and the two of them quickly became friends. Once a strong, strapping boxer who used his powerful hands to strangle his victims, he was now bound to a wheelchair to get around. His health failing, and he knew he only had a short amount of time left. Holland seemed like the perfect person. The two of them struck up a conversation where they would sit around, have pizza, and drink Dr. Peppers. Holland has described Little as both a genius and a complete sociopath, adding the killer could never adequately explain to him why he did what he did. Although he knows that he is an introvert, Holland said he could never get him to express his true emotions. It was like I was talking to a recording. He just sat there, motionless, most of the time, eating pizza, drinking Dr. Pepper, and had very little emotion on his face. He never smiled, he never cried, he never got angry. A complete sociopath. The Ranger did work tirelessly to create and maintain a bond with Richard Little. During their hundreds of hours of interviews, bringing him his favorite snacks such as pizza, Dr. Pepper, and Skittles, and also grits for breakfast and sausage links from a nearby restaurant. Their mutual interest in sports gave them something to talk about besides just the horrific events around Little's life. James Holland gave Little as much assurance as he could that he would never be executed or be brought to justice for the crimes that he was about to confess to. Addressed Little by his childhood nickname, Sammy, while Little called Holland Jimmy, and once told the Los Angeles Times he had found a friend in a Texas Ranger. He told 60 Minutes he hoped the confessions might exonerate anyone wrongly convicted of crimes. To date, of the 60 confirmed murders that they have found, bodies and evidence that leads back to Little, no one has been convicted for those 60 murders. Of the 60 murders they have confirmed as of 2020, 18 of them were believed to have been overdoses, or the woman who was either a prostitute or poor and their body was located years later after the crimes, were believed to have died by other circumstances. Nothing led to a serial killer or tipped off that any of these victims were killed by the same person. Richard Little, a transient who traveled the country when he wasn't in jail for larceny or drugs or other crimes, Little said he started killing women in Miami on New Year's Eve, 1970. It was like a drug, he said. It came to me. I was just natural for it. It was like some extra power just came to me, and I just knew I was born to be a killer. His last killing was in 2005 in Tupelo, Mississippi. He also killed people in Tennessee, Texas, Ohio, Kentucky, Nevada, Arkansas, Wyoming, Missouri, and at least another dozen states on top of that. Kentucky authorities finally caught up with him in 2012 after his arrest on drug charges, and his DNA linked him to 3 California killings and 1 from Kentucky. When he began recounting the other slayings, authorities were astonished at how much he remembered. His paintings, he said, indicated he had a photographic memory. Most of his paintings were crudely done, but some of them were as if he had painted an actual photograph. Those were mainly the older victims from the 1970s that he recalled every aspect about them, their names, their locations, where he dumped their bodies. But as the years went on and his memory and age, took hold of him, Little could not remember or recall most of the defects or information about the victims that he had killed, other than where he had dumped the body and if they had jewelry on them, what he had done with the jewelry, where it was today, and where he had hid some of the personal items and mementos, hiding them in caves and other locations around the United States, places where no one would ever find them. Detectives, as of 2020, found 8 of these hiding places where he had stashed jewelry, identification, and personal items, personal trophies of his victims. One killing was solved after Little recalled the victim wore dentures. Another after he told Holland he'd killed the victim near a set of unusual arches in Florida. The victim he met outside of a Miami strip club in 1984 was remembered as being 25 years old with short blonde hair, blue eyes, and a hippie look, he said. As he continued to talk, authorities across the country rushed to investigate old cases, track down relatives, and bring closure to families. Little himself revealed few details about his own life, other than he was raised in Lorain, Ohio, by his grandmother. None of this, to this date of 2020, when this report was made, has been authenticated. No one can actually confirm that he actually lived in Lorain, Ohio, or that he was raised by his biological or someone he called his grandmother. For all we know, he could have grown up and lived with his own biological parents. Everything about his whereabouts and his younger years in life is a complete mystery still to the FBI and to law enforcement agencies that have been looking into his past since he started confessing to the murders. Little revealed later on that as he grew up, he sometimes would use the name Samuel McDowell, and he also used the last name of McPherson, Samuel McPherson. Both names turned out to be connected to missing cases reports and people of interest in several different missing case reports, but no one ever knew that he was an African American man. Little was once married and said that during the time that he was married, he never killed. He couldn't do it. But as soon as his marriage ended, he went right back to doing what he was doing. Little also went on to describe to Holland several long-term relationships he had. He claimed he developed a fetish for women's necks after becoming sexually aroused when he saw his kindergarten teacher touch her neck. He was always careful, he added, to avoid looking at the necks of his wife or his girlfriends, and never hurt anyone he loved. I don't think there was another person who didn't want me to stop what I was doing, but I couldn't. There was nothing inside me that would stop me. Even after I was arrested and finally incarcerated on this, and found guilty and serve a life sentence, I couldn't stop. The thought is always there. I've seen female prison guards. I've seen women working in a nursery. And I've thought about, I could kill them in just a matter of seconds. It's not that long. People like to believe that it takes longer to strangle someone to death. But if you know how to do it, if you know, like I do, you can do it very quickly, and no one can stop you. Thank you for joining me today. Samuel Little is dead at the age of 80. By far, the most prolific serial killer in American history has gone. Hopefully now these families will be able to get some closure